Put God first.
Sometimes a big part of success is just not being fucking lazy and just doing it.
Work your ass off. There is no magic pill. It drives me crazy to go to the gym. You read 1 hour a day. I went and worked out 5 hours a day, and I was working on construction. You see, if you don't have a vision of where you go, and if you don't have a goal where you go, you drift around and you never end up anywhere. 74% hate their job in America. The majority of people don't like what they're doing.
Every time I looked up, she was looking at me, just looking me in the eye. And I didn't know who she was, and I said, she said, somebody give me a pen, give me a pencil, I have a prophecy. March 27, 1975, she said, boy, you are gonna travel the world and speak to millions of people. Now mind you, I was flunked out of college. I'm thinking about joining the army. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and she's telling me I'm gonna travel the world and speak to millions of people. Well, I have traveled the world, and I have spoke to millions of people.
So I worked in construction. I went to college. I worked out in the gym, and at night from 8 o'clock at night to 12 midnight, I went to acting class 4 times a week. So I did all of that. There was not one single minute that I wasted.
Do is get my kids involved in martial arts and give them the opportunity to pursue difficult things, and understanding that through pursuing these difficult things, like in accomplishing stuff, like you learn something about yourself. You learn that you have this ability inside of you to overcome. Get obsessed with life improvement. Find things that you enjoy doing that are difficult, do them and get better at them. It seems so simplistic. It seems like a ridiculous, idealistic point of view, but it's effective. You have to have a belief in yourself. For some people out there that aren't feeling good, man, if you just fucking struggled more, you get over that struggle, you feel better. It sounds so simplistic, but I swear by it. It's hard for people to break momentum too. Momentum that's good momentum, or momentum that's bad momentum. When I get on a good groove of working out all the time, I feel it. Like after I'm done working out, I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to get in there again. I can't wait to work out again. That's the good momentum. Your thing is, just go and do it. Just force yourself to do it. And if you feel like shit because you ate lunch, then your lunch was, filled with bullshit, well then, hey dummy, don't eat shitty lunch tomorrow. Tomorrow try a nice salad. Yeah. Try a salad with some salmon and see how you feel then. You're like, hey, I feel way better today at 6 o'clock. Duh. Yeah. Now your decision making will be better. Like people don't understand how significant it is. Like all these little decisions, those are like that's the path for the rest of your existence on Earth. And if you decide to go to fucking Cheetos chocolate chip cookie route, you're just making a shit path. You're carving your fucking path through broken rocks and glass, and it's not the way to go.
I didn't always stick with him, but he always stuck with me. So stick with him in everything you do. If you think you want to do what you think I've done, then do what I've done and stick with God. Number 2, fail big. That's right. Fail big. Today's the beginning of the rest of your life, and it can be very frightening. It's a new world out there. It's a mean world out there, and you only live once. So do what you feel passionate about. Take chances. But don't be afraid to go outside the box. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Don't be afraid to fail big, to dream big. But remember, dreams without goals are just dreams, and they ultimately fuel disappointment. So have dreams, but have goals.
I went to college. I went and worked out 5 hours a day, and I was working on construction. Because in those days in bodybuilding, there was no money. I didn't have the money for food supplements or anything. So I had to go to work. So I worked in construction. I went to college. I worked out in the gym, and at night from 8 o'clock at night to 12 midnight, I went to acting class 4 times a week. So I did all of that. There was not one single minute that I wasted. And this is why I'm standing here today. With the age of 20, I went to London and I won the Mr. Universe contest as the youngest Mr. Universe ever. And it was because I had a goal. You see, if you don't have a vision of where you go, and if you don't have a goal where you go, you drift around and you never end up anywhere. 74% hate their job in America. The majority of people don't like what they're doing because they're really not doing it because they didn't have a goal and they followed this goal. They just aimlessly drift around and then all of a sudden they...
Working really hard is what successful people do. Remember that. Just because you're doing a lot more doesn't mean you're getting a lot more done. Don't confuse movement with progress. Everything that you think you see in me, everything that I've accomplished, everything that you think I have, and I have a few things, everything that I have is by the grace of God. Understand that. It's a gift. I was sitting in my mother's beauty parlor and I'm looking in the mirror and I see behind me this woman under the dryer. And every time she looked up, every time I looked up, she was looking at me, just looking me in the eye. And I didn't know who she was. And I said, she said, somebody give me a pen, give me a pencil. I have a prophecy. March 27, 1975. She said, boy, you are going to travel the world and speak to millions of people. And I have spoke to millions of people. But that's not the most important thing, the success that I had. The most important thing is that what she taught me and what she told me that day has stayed with me since. I've been protected. I've been directed. I've been corrected. I've kept God in my life and has kept me humble. I didn't always stick with him, but he always stuck with me. So stick with him in everything you do. If you think you want to do what you think I've done, then do what I've done and stick with God. When you wake up in the morning, you have to get on your knees to reach them. And while you're down there, say thank you for grace. Thank you for mercy. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for wisdom. Thank you for parents. Thank you for love. Thank you for kindness. Thank you for humility. Thank you for peace. Thank you for prosperity. Say thank you in advance for what's already yours. That's how I live my life. That's why I am, one of the reasons why I am today. Say thank you in advance for what is already yours. True desire in the heart for anything good is God's proof to you sent beforehand to indicate that it's yours already.
But above all, if you're aiming at anything above mediocrity, you need to have a mastermind alliance of one or more people beside yourself, who not only will cooperate with you, but who will go out of the way to help you and assist you, and who have the ability to do something that will be of benefit to you. And it's up to you to take the initiative to build those mastermind allies. You know, they don't just come along and join you because you're a good fellow. You have to lay out a plan, you have to have an objective, and you have to find the people suitable to make up your mastermind alliance. And then you have to give them an adequate motive for becoming a mastermind ally of yours. Now, incidentally, I happen to know that the vast majority of people do not have a mastermind alliance with other people. Major purpose. Find out just exactly how much self-reliance you have. But do you know how you can tell about how much self-reliance you have? Would you be interested in knowing how you can check that very accurately?
Yeah.
All right, go back up there to number 1 and carefully evaluate your definite major purpose and see just how big that is. Or if you have a definite major purpose, and if you don't have one, or if it's not outstanding and above anything that you've attained up to the present, then you don't have very much self-reliance, and you should grade very low on that. If you have the proper amount of self-reliance, you'll step your definite major purpose up way beyond anything you have ever achieved before, and you'll become determined to attain it. Discipline sufficient to ensure mastery of the head and the heart, and to sustain one's motives until they are realized. Where and when do you need self-discipline most, do you think? When you're on the way up and when everything's rosy and going well and you're succeeding? Is that when you need it? I thought you'd call me on that one. That's right. You need self-discipline when the going is hard, when the outlook is not favorable. What kind of self-discipline do you need at that point? Why, you need discipline over your mind to the extent that you know where you're going, you know that you have a right to go there, and you know that you're determined to go there regardless of how hard the going may be or how much opposition you may meet with. And you'll need at least enough self-discipline to sustain you through the period when the going is hard instead of quitting or complaining. And number 6, persistence based on the will to win. Do you know how many times the average person has to fail before he quits or decides he wants to do something else? Once. Don't you think you're generous? Once. Did you ever hear of the fellow who fails before he starts because he knows that there's no use in starting because he knows he can't do a thing? Did you ever hear of him? Well, that cuts it down below 1. You see? And would you be interested in knowing that the vast majority of people fail before they start? They actually never make a start. They think of things that they might do, but they never do anything about it. And did you know also that a vast majority of the people, even though they do start, at the first opposition they quit or allow themselves to be diverted over to something else? I wonder, it just occurs to me to ask a question. I wonder if you who have been here close to me and where we've taken our hair down and talking frankly, I wonder if you know what my outstanding asset it happens to be.
Never give up.
Will to win. Well, yeah, you're getting hot. I have persistence and the will to win, and also the self-discipline with which to stick to a thing all the harder when the going is the hardest. Now, that is my outstanding quality. It always has been, it always will be. And I want to tell you, without those traits, I never would have completed this philosophy. I never would have been able to have it introduced as widely as it has been, and I wouldn't be standing here talking to you tonight. And what about that trait? Is that something you're born with, or is it something that you can acquire? Well, if you couldn't acquire it, there'd be no use of talking about this lesson, would there? Certainly you can acquire it. And it's not very difficult at that. What is it that causes a person to be persistent, by the way? Yes, motive. Burning desire. Do you know what a burning desire is? Burning desire, or back of a motive, is what makes people persistent, isn't it? A burning desire back of a motive. I never think of persistence and a burning desire that I don't think of my courtship. I remember that I put more persistence and more burning desire back of my courtship than anything else that I ever went into in my life. And I want to tell you, without that, I don't think you get very far in a courtship. Well, don't you think you could transmute that emotion over to something else, putting it back of your business or your profession or your job, and have just as much emotional feeling about attaining success in your job as you could about selling yourself to the one of your choice? Don't you think you could do that? You know what that word transmute means, by the way? Do you? What does it mean? Fine.
Redirect.
Fine. Marvelous.
Redirect.
Have you ever tried it on anything or anybody? Marvelous. Marvelous. If you haven't tried it, start trying it. Next time you feel moody or discouraged, try to change that over into an emotion of courage and faith. You see what a marvelous thing happens to you. You change the whole chemistry of your whole brain and your whole body, and you'll be much more effective. And number 7 is a well-developed faculty of the imagination, controlled and directed. Do you think those last words there are important? Yes, an imagination not controlled and directed might be very dangerous. I once made a survey, made an analysis of all of the men in the federal penitentiaries of the United States. I did that for the Department of Justice. And you'll be interested in knowing that the majority of the men in the penitentiary were there because they had too much imagination. but it was not controlled and directed in a constructive direction. Now, imagination is a marvelous thing, but if you don't have it under control and if you don't direct it to definite ends, constructive ends, it may be very dangerous to you. And number 8, the habit of forming definite and prompt decisions. By the way, do you do that? Do you form definite and prompt decisions when you have all of the facts in hand with which to make decisions?
Yes.
Well, I think some of you are just a little bit too modest. Well, seriously, friends, if you do not have the habit of making decisions promptly and definitely, clear-cut decisions when all of the facts are in, you're loafing on the job, you're procrastinating, and you're destroying this very vital thing called personal initiative. One of the finest places to start practicing personal initiative is to learn to make decisions firmly and definitely and quickly once you have all of the facts available. Now, I'm not talking about snap judgments. I'm not talking about opinions or snap judgments based upon half-baked evidence. I'm talking about facts, all of the facts on a given subject, which are not in your hands and available. You should then do something with those facts. You should make up your mind exactly what you're going to do and not dilly-dally around, as so many people do. Because if you do that, first thing you know, you will be in the habit of dilly-dallying around in connection with everything. In other words, you will not be a person who acts upon his own personal initiative. And number... the habit of basing opinions on facts instead of relying on guesswork. How many of you do that? How many of you rely upon the facts instead of guesswork? Well, pretty truthful bunch, I think. I wonder if you do. I wonder if you recognize how many times you're acting on guesswork in comparison to the number of times that you're acting upon facts in forming your opinions. I wonder if you recognize the importance of making it your business to get at facts before you form an opinion about anything. Did you know that you have no right to an opinion about anything at any time, anywhere, unless it's based upon facts or what you believe to be facts? Did you know that? And why is that true? Would you tell me why you don't have a right to do that? Because you don't want to get into trouble. You don't want to fail. That's why. Of course, you can go ahead and have opinions, and we all do, a flock of them. You can even give them to somebody else without them asking for them, and we do that right along. But before you really and truly can safely express an opinion or have one, you must do a certain amount of research and base your opinion upon facts or what you believe to be facts. Now we'll come down to this enthusiasm one, number 10. The capacity to generate enthusiasm at will and control. Do you know how to generate enthusiasm at will? 5. What's back of all this? What happens before you start doing anything in connection with enthusiasm? Yes, you have to feel it, don't you? You have to feel the emotion you have to be quickened, and your mind has to be alerted with some definite objective or purpose or motive. And then you do something about that motive. You do it with words, with the expression of your face, or by some other form of action. That word action is inseparable from the word enthusiasm. You can't separate the two. Now, there are two kinds of enthusiasm. There's passive enthusiasm, enthusiasm which you feel, but you give no expression of it whatsoever. And there are times when you need that kind, believe you me. Because if you don't have that kind, you'll disclose to other people what goes on in your mind at times when you don't want that to happen. You take a great leader, a great executive, and while he may have a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, he'll display that enthusiasm only to whomsoever he pleases and under whatsoever circumstances he pleases. He will not just turn it on and go off and leave it. That's the way you and I do it. Or do we? That's the way the majority of people do. When they have enthusiasm, they just turn it on and blubber over in it, and they accomplish nothing. Controlled enthusiasm turned on at the right time and then turned off at the right time, is an important thing, and your initiative is the only thing that can control that. You know, if you took that one subject alone, the question of how to turn on and off enthusiasm, and got the art down fine, you could become a marvelous salesman of anything you might want to sell. Did you know that? You really could. Did you ever hear of anybody selling anything that didn't feel enthusiasm over what he's trying to sell? Did you? Did you ever sell anything that you didn't have that feeling of enthusiasm over what you were trying to do for the other fellow? You may have thought you did, but you didn't. If you didn't have that feeling of enthusiasm and on your own initiative, then you didn't make a sale. Somebody may have bought something from you because he needed it and had to have it, but you had very little to do with it unless you had that feeling that you imparted to him. And how do you impart the feeling of enthusiasm to another person? How do you do that when you're selling, for instance?